Hi, my name is Jameel, and I'm a veteran esoteric scholar and also a psychic. Um, Recently, I've been studying parapsychology, and this goes back to formal parapsychology for about 7 months. Previous to that, I studied channeling, ESP, which ESP is a form of parapsychology, but more of the traditional New Age type of psychic practices. Channeling extraterrestrials and all that stuff, which is still parapsychology, but it's just not formal parapsychology. I had got into parapsychology through just watching interviews and YouTube videos and reading books, and I started to get deeper into my own psychic abilities. Um, one of the things I want to talk about is channeling. And to most people who've never heard of this is going to sound strange, but channeling is linking your own frequency with that of another entity outside yourself. And a psychic signal is actually faster than the speed of light. there's something known as the metaparticle or the tachyon particle, which is it's a psychic signal. And an individual can be channeling right here in a setting like this, and they can be channeling with a being on another planet or on the other side of the universe. How do two individual groups or individuals exchange psychic information, which you would say light years away? That shows you the psychic signal is faster than the speed of light. Okay. Now, my favorite subject when it comes to channeling is channeling reptilian type beings, reptilian type entities. Now, I started studying theta magic and theta science, dealing with the theta brainwave and fine tuning your brainwave to become more psychic. And I did some case studies on ESP, watching ESP films. There was a 1983 film about ESP that was aired on television at that time in the 80s, and now you can watch it on YouTube. I was researching many other aspects of the paranormal. And when it comes to the tachyon particle, tachi meaning rapid, tachi in Greek means rapid. And this gets into a little bit into environmental psychology, how your environment affects the paranormal around you. Now, I'm going to be conducting some channeling sessions in the future, and there's something an individual has known as a soul group. Individuals have their own soul, then they come from a soul group where it's not just you, but it's your family, your friends, even to animals. So through each incarnation you have, your soul group provides different experiences for you. So if I want to communicate with a reptilian type entity, I don't necessarily look at it as I'm communicating with an extraterrestrial being or an interdimensional, pan-dimensional, and extra-dimensional, whatever you want to call it, outside myself. I know I have a soul collective group. Within my own incarnations, there are reptilian beings, and within the incarnations of my soul collective, there is reptilian beings. So I would, through a meditation, ask my soul collective to reveal one of these entities to me. And that's come from a lot of meditation, study, and watching other channelers. And I got a chance to meet through channeling. I got a chance to meet what I would consider a high level reptilian. And this stuff sounds silly to people who've never heard of channeling or dealt with reptilians. I don't know anything about it. It sounds like science fiction, but humans eventually are going to come more into the realization that these beings exist. And me personally, I never judge a book by its cover. Whether it's talking to people on the streets, or dealing with wild animals, or dealing with what you call extraterrestrials, I know that these creatures, these extraterrestrial creatures exist. So the reptilian beings watch humans a lot. And some of the energy I got from the reptilian being that was watching me as the reptilian being. It was an energy exchange that I got from the being, that the being was appreciative of me, the being liked me, and the being saw me as having adventures. And as a reptile being that is extremely intelligent, and it was sending me energy and information, sort of like one of us watching a group of children or something. That's kind of, or watching a pack of animals. That's kind of the feeling I got from it. And the reptile being, the energy I was getting was the reptile being was communicating with other reptilians about my experience. It was this reptilian creature was having communication with other reptilians about what I was doing and how I was reacting to certain things. And this reptile being was not, it was not, it was of a more of a service to others nature. Like it was saying, how can I assist another group of individuals or another individual? And so the reptilian being itself used to be a part of a secret society of reptilians that are out in the universe. This is going to sound silly, but I meditated on this for a long time, and I got psychic downloads from this information. And the reptilian being was meditating about the other the reptilian being was involved in some sort of reptilian secret society, and the reptilian being now just watches humans and helps humans slowly but surely develop. And so, going through my parapsychology and recognizing what psycho-energetic energy was, I started communicating with these reptilian beings. And then the energy they started tuning my psychic ability more and more to have the perception of a human being, but also have the perception of what a reptilian would see, or how a reptilian could perceive something. And reptilians have an extra dimensional perspective. They can look at an individual and see their past and their future and where they're at now. They can read an aura right away. They know where an individual's heart is. So if an individual is susceptible to greed or violence, or an individual is only, cares about themselves, reptilians who are on the, what you call, manipulative side, they know how to manipulate that. But if they see an individual who is experiencing compassion and stuff, they know how to recognize that too. And so this reptilian being was uploading information to me, and one of the things the reptilian being was saying to me was, don't have as much fear. Like we want you to lose. We need you to lose all fear. The reptilian being was saying, we've been watching you for a few years, and you've been making a lot of progress on Earth, and you're changing rapidly, and we've decided to assist you during this incarnation, but we need you to lose as much fear as possible, not to do anything silly or ignorant out of losing fear. Like, remain in wisdom and remain intelligent and grow in intelligence and knowledge, but we need to remove that fear connotation from you. And they're saying, the reptilian being was saying, we know it's hard for you. We know how it is for humans on Earth, but that's something we see for you. And so now I've met people who are expert channelers who have done dozens of channeling sessions. And for me, I lose concentration quickly. Like, I can get information downloaded to me, or I pick it up. But for me to sit and do a channeling session for an hour, that's too long for me. I don't have the attention span to do it, right? But I, over time, grew in knowledge and intelligence with this reptilian being. And the reptilian being was sharing a lot of information with me about how reptilians watch humans all the time, and they usually don't get involved with humans, or sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. And it was making me see how silly people were, how silly, like, you look at people and you see how their life is limited. Like, their minds are capable of going further, but their minds usually don't go further. It's like human, even on a large corporate level, where people have lots of money and cars, and they have these college degrees, their mindset really isn't too much different from what you see on a street level. And that's something the reptilians were sharing with me, is people aren't spiritually developing in the manner they should be. There's financial development on the planet where people go from poor to rich, but as far as spirituality goes, very few people go from a low level of spirituality to a very high level of spirituality. Most people aren't looking for that. So I'm going to be channeling some of this reptilian in the future, and this reptilian being exists and exists within a realm of its own. It interacts with humans and different sorts of people. But the reptilian being was showing me that it had its own planet at one time. That this reptilian lived on its own planet. It had its own planet at one time, and it was pretty fascinating. And when I look to indigenous cultures in Africa and in South America, these people, you can see how these people depict themselves as looking like reptilians. They wear reptilian costumes, reptilian masks, and whatnot. And so reptilians are very fascinating to me. Reptilians are extremely fascinating to me. I'm looking at pictures of reptilians right now. And a lot of supernatural power comes from the brainstem. That's one thing I've learned about channeling is a lot of within the brainstem, you have 12 pairs of cranial nerves, and out of those 12 pairs of cranial nerves, you have the grayish brain matter, and that's where a lot of energy is absorbed into. And that runs through the base of your spine, through the chakra system, up to your brain, through the brainstem. And the cranial nerves dictate motor functions such as hearing, taste, and your other sensory functions. And it is fascinating to me how the movie industry spends millions of dollars on films about reptilians and about space creatures and extraterrestrials, and then when it comes to everyday life, people say, like, that's not reality, it's not real. Why are millions and millions and millions of dollars being spent on scripts about extraterrestrials if they don't exist? That's what I never got. You wouldn't have millions of dollars spent on scripts about creatures if they didn't exist. And within my metaphysical mentoring classes, I always challenge people with this. A person cannot conceive of non-existence. And you can try right now. Try to picture non-existence. It's not possible. You cannot picture non-existence. You can picture an emptiness, but that's still something. The mind is not capable of conceiving non-existence. So anything you can imagine somewhere exists. As silly as it is, it exists in some sort of form, some sort of reality. Right? And that's one thing, that's something I'm working on right now, is learning about different forms of existence and different abilities people have, like telekinesis. There's a film with Drew Barrymore called Firestarter. It's an older film. And the film is based on parapsychology. But it's based on Drew Barrymore as a little girl catching things on fire. And It's a good film. Uh, Her grandfather, Lionel Barrymore, was an excellent actor. He made a film. He was in a film called Devil Doll. I know I'm detracting. So he was in a film called Devil Doll, and in the film he was in prison, and he got out of prison. He started shrinking dogs and shrinking people and all this. And so every time I watch a film of Drew Barrymore, it makes me think of her grandfather, Lionel Barrymore. But he was an excellent actor in that film Devil Doll. They did a miraculous job with it. It's hard to imagine. I still try to picture how they could do that with films in the 30s. But anyhow, so Drew Barrymore was in the film Firestarter, Lionel Barrymore's granddaughter. And in the film Firestarter, Drew Barrymore is catching all objects on fire and people on fire. And that's parapsychology. And through channeling this reptilian entity, I was learning that this stuff is very possible. Humans have the ability to do stuff. You got to think how many people have been born over the last 100 years that have been put away in hospitals. People have been born that looked like frog people and lizard people and fish people. I saw a guy in China who had trees growing out of him. It's on YouTube. Just type in "tree man" in China, and they put these people away in hospitals and try to hide them from the public. You know, the people have been born with all sorts of strange, miraculous stuff. There's people out there who can do this, move objects with their mind and whatnot, and they've been hiding these people and putting these people away, sort of like the X-Men series. Sort of like the X-Men series. It almost reminds me of that movie Rain Man with what was this? Dustin Hoffman and Tom Cruise, where they bring him to the casino, and he's supposed to be an imbecile, but at the same time he's a mathematical genius. And the reptilian beings are interesting. You know, again, I gotta tell this story. I was under some sort of reptilian. It was a reptilian entity that I was interacting with for a couple days, and I got so much information from this being, just being with around the energy of the being, and it was showing me specifically how the material world, society, people, everything we encounter, inseminates from the spiritual world. That there's masters in the spiritual world, in the etheric realm, that created the material realm as a school for us to be in. Like right now, Earth is a school that's developed for people to incarnate in, but it was created from the spiritual world. And so this reptilian being was sharing with me that there's no real separation from material and spiritual. It's all one. It was teaching me about how when they say you die and you go to the others, there is no, it's all one. It's just a different experience of the same energy. Even the church has a lot of files. When you talk about, especially the Catholic Church, they have a lot of files on stigmata, and they have paranormal files. They started recording, not just recording the exorcism, but they started recording all sorts of EVPs, conversations, in other dimensions, and more of that is coming out on the internet. And it just mystifies me how in everyday society people still cannot accept the paranormal after all the billions of dollars, trillions of dollars that has been spent on studying the paranormal. People can just not accept it. I have all kinds of notes. This is all. There's notes and notes and notes I have. But man, so my channeling is getting better, and the reptilian entity again was expressing to me that it was a high level reptilian, and what it meant by high level reptilian, it communicated to me that it oversaw groups of reptilians throughout the galaxy. And this sounds, I know a lot of people will be tripping off what I'm saying, but that's what the reptilian was communicating with to me, and the reptilian was communicating to me that it was communicating to me that I was its favorite human, that it enjoyed watching me the most for some reason. And so I began channeling this energy, and I continue channeling it. And I'll just be sitting there, and the reptilian will just start sending me information. And it's a kind being. It's not. It's a wise being. It's a kind being. And one of the things the reptilian being was communicating to me too, and this is very deep. The reptilian being was communicating to me. It was saying, "Stay out of other people's other." The reptilian being knew that I was very curious about. Over the years, I've done a lot of research into a lot of conspiracies, and I've done presentations on a lot of conspiracies over the years. But the reptilian being was communicating to me. It was saying, stay out of everyday people's, stay out of the public theme. Basically, it was saying that it was saying that because your awareness level is so high and your energy is so high, you're going to interfere with the rituals of the other reptilians. He was saying that the other reptilians are doing rituals on humans, and you're going to interfere with he was saying that these reptilians know who you are, and that they don't want to hurt you, that they understand, they've accepted that your consciousness is greatly expanded compared to most humans, and they don't mean any harm on you, but you don't mix with the other humans, that you're going to interfere with their ritual, the reptilians, higher reptilians rituals. So he was saying, stay away from those beings. Stay away from the regular groups of individuals in society. Like, you want to meet women and have friends and all this stuff, but when you get out into the world and you're dealing with a lot of people, stay away from these large groups. Don't go into these large groups, because these large groups are being some of these large groups, the consciousness of the group, the consciousness of these overall groups is weak, and they're being programmed through some of the reptilian rituals, and you being there interferes with that ritual, and you might be, and you suscept yourself to a consequence because of your presence. He said the reptilians don't want to do anything. He said these reptilians don't want to hurt you, but they don't want you to interfere with the ritual. So he said, stay away from the you know, do your meditation and your research and your work and continue moving forward, but avoid the pitfalls of society. And that's how I just get information. I'll just be sitting there. And the reptilian was schooling. The reptilian was schooling me. The reptilian was saying one of the reasons also is he's saying people try to hide behind your energy. People aren't as aware as you are, and they'll try to use you to hide from what they don't understand. So he was saying we got you covered to stay away from the large groups. And that brought closure for me, because it taught me to be respectful of the reptilian that I'm in communication with. He said, if you don't agree with what agendas are of other beings, even if you don't agree with it, you have to respect. You have to respect it, and because there's freedom of choice. And then I said, I was asking the being in a meditation state. So he said, stay out of it. I said, what kind of ritual are you talking about? And he said, the whole universe runs off of programming. And there's different sorts of programming going through different consciousness. It was pretty deep stuff. It was pretty deep stuff. He was saying, we need you to continue your work. He was saying, we need you to continue your work. He said, he was communicating with me, we needed you to continue your work. He was saying, you're putting a lot of things into balance. Yeah, he was saying you're putting things into balance, and so that's something I've been doing. It's just I keep learning more information, and what else was I going to say? One of the things I'm trying to figure out is, what does it look like when you get into outer space? Because you have the solar system, right? Our solar system is supposed to have 9 planets: Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. And within these 9 planets, you have all these moons and everything. And I've seen video footage that shows near space travel, and it looks all black. But then you see the NASA ultraviolet outer space videos, and you can see, the Earth, and there's stars out there. And so I want to know what it looks like. That's what I'm trying to get from my meditations, is what does it look like? What does it look like outside the atmosphere? Yeah, I'm looking at these pictures as I'm speaking. I'm going through here. So that's what I'm going to be doing. I have some channeling. But again, where's my other notes? I have all kinds of notes. I got files. All kinds of notes and stuff. Parapsychology. This is one of the things. I have this new diagram I'm going to share with people. Now this is on emotion. And a lot of the people that I work with are fractured individuals looking for information, truth seekers. And I try to find an image to go with how they feel. Just like when you're in school, in elementary school, and you say, pick a face for how you feel. What expression are you going through? And to get people to feel acceptable of where they're at. If somebody's sad, feel acceptable of being sad. If you're happy, feel acceptable of being happy. I feel that a lot of people have had, try to put on a cliche front of happiness, and they're really not happy. It turns into almost like what you call a Greek tragedy. In ancient Greece, they used to have big plays, and everybody had to go to the play. From the royalty in ancient Greece all the way down to homeless, even the prisoners had to go. Everybody had to go to the play, and within the play, they would have these masks, and the masks would depict sadness or happiness. If the character was sad, there'd be a gigantic mask that looked sad. So everybody would know it'd be a gigantic mask that looked happy. So everybody could be happy. In the ancient world, people were accepting of their emotions. And now, people aren't expressing their emotions as much. They're saying, if you want to be sad, take this drug or take this pill. Pharmacology, which also came from ancient Greece, right? But I believe, if you're sad if you're sad, that's okay. It's okay to be sad. You have to be able to learn from your emotions, and then you build emotional intelligence. And the different. Oh, what is this right here? The brain, the mammalian brain complex. Oh, the reptilian complex, the reptilian part of the brain. So, okay, now I'm going to wind up on this video. I'm going to keep going through here and looking at these reptilian creatures. So that's what I'm doing, is getting more into touch with this reptilian being and learning and gathering information for other people, and most likely maybe develop a little, following or something, have a few people may be able to help me in some way, donate to me. Okay, now I'm going to look at my website one more time and see if I have everything said I want to say. Metaphysicalconsultant.com. Then there's a page that says Jameel'S. We're going to look. Here's a picture of me when I was about 7, 6, 7. How old was I up there? About 6, 7, 8, somewhere in there. I'm trying to see what happened. See, okay, my father passed away when I was about 5 years old, and so I believe I grew some sort of disassociation because of that. Like when dogs separate from their owner, the dogs get some sort of separation issue. My father passed when I was about 5, so I feel that I had some sort of separation issue, and I didn't know it at the time because I was so young. But trying to think, what was I doing? 6, 7. What was I was interested in dinosaurs and what else? I didn't like school. That's one thing. When I was 5, when I was about that age, I didn't really want to go to school. I didn't like school. See, my father had a lot of children. I was his youngest child, and him and my mother were married before I was born. And he passed away when I was about 5. But I have brothers and sisters all over the country. I have brothers and sisters all over the area I live at. Biological brothers, just from my father. Chicago, out east, out west. I have brothers and sisters I don't even know. That's the type of guy he was. He just ran. He had a lot of children, but I was being raised by him before. I was raised by him before he passed. But he had some interesting. I'm trying to think. My father was with. This is one thing I remember hearing. He was dating at one time Miss Black America. You had Miss America, then you had Miss Black America, because this was in the early 60s. Before segregation, before the end of segregation came. And so he had relations with Miss Black America, and he knew a lot of famous people, and he knew Bobby Brown, when Bobby Brown was a singer in Boston on the streets, a little group he had. He knew a lot of people. And so growing up, even though he passed, all these people would always tell me, man, I knew your father. Your father had 3 or 4 Cadillacs, blah, 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 blah. And we used to go to Chicago all the time. And so growing up, all these people knew my father. But my father passed away when I was young. So I used to constantly hear stories from older people of who my father was. He would say, man, your father used to go out to California, and your father used to hang out with celebrities and all this stuff. And your father knew, man, we grew up around your father, blah, 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 blah. And so a lot of people would say, and then when I tell people, they say, your father was Curlin? And I say, yeah, that's my father. He's like, man, your father, he used to, I didn't know that was your father, man, your father, blah, blah. And so that's kind of how I grew up at early stage. But my grandfather taught me a lot. My grandfather was very knowledgeable in a lot of different areas, and so I learned a lot of street knowledge from the people that grew up around my father. And my father was a Marine. You know, my father was a United States Marine. My father went to the United States Marine Corps in 1956. And so my father was a Marine, and so a lot of my father's friends were in the military. A lot of my father's friends were in the Marine Corps and different services and stuff, but they knew him, and he lived, you know, at that time, lived when he got out of the service, you know, he had a lot of friends in the streets. My grandfather was brilliant. He had a lot of, he taught me a lot of knowledge. And I come across people I'm related to all the time. Like, there's people I'm related to, and I don't, there's all kinds of people. I'll be sitting there. I remember there was one guy, he was like, isn't your grandfather, Bobo? And I said, yeah. I said, yeah, that's my grandfather. And this is my father's father. And he said, you know, we're related. I said, what do you mean? And he showed me in his wallet, he had pictures of my grandfather, and me and him are cousins. I didn't even know it. I said, we're related. He said, yeah, man, we're related. You're my cousin. I said, wow. Then I got step family and stuff. So I grew up around 6, 7, 8, growing up. That's how I grew up. People always say they knew my father, but my father wasn't around. He passed away, but everybody knew him. So I grew up like that. And then I have a friend who was a rapper that I call that Razor, and he's well known. A lot of people say, you know him? I say, yeah, man, that's my best friend. That's my best friend growing up. And and he's a rapper. He's a good rapper too. And we made some demo tapes. I started recording him at about 9. I started recording him. My mother bought me a tape cassette recorder when I was about 7, and I wanted a CD player. So I had a tape cassette recorder. Then I had the CD player. And on the CD player, I wanted I wanted to listen to Snoop Doggy Dogg, right? And so I got the album Murder Was the Case, and I started listening to it. And I didn't know what the album was about. You know what I mean? I didn't really know anything about rap. But I'm listening to it. And then my friend Razor, he's rebel. He just starts rapping, and he just won't stop rapping. He'll just start rapping and just won't stop rapping. And so I just started recording him on the little cassette tapes. And we would ride around on bicycles, and we would ride all over the area that we were living at the time. And my father passed when I was 5, but my father knew Razor's family. My father knew Razor really, you know, he raised Razor like he was raising me. And so Razor was we would go from place to place to place, and we would buy these little cassette tapes for like 69 cents. We'd sell them for $2. The music wasn't any good. He just started rapping, but that's what we were doing. Then when I got older, we did a demo. Look, I'm sorry. Okay, so being raised. And I never got in trouble. That's one thing. I never got in any trouble in the and I never got any trouble in where I was living at when I was with Razor. We never got in any trouble. I didn't get. He did get in trouble sometimes. I got in trouble. I always got in trouble, and it's not anything racial. But I always got in trouble hanging out with the younger white guys in my age group. I always got in trouble hanging around them. And I can never figure that out. Not making it anything racial. I don't care what race somebody is. It doesn't matter to me what you look like. But I noticed that. And man, Razor was so funny. Razor was so funny growing up. Razor was hyperactive. Razor, Razor, Razor was most hype. I never seen anybody as hyper as him. He was, oh my god, man. He God, he used to get hyper and be yelling at cars and stuff and be yelling at people. And I was scared. I was scared he was gonna get killed. Like I was gonna get shot being around him because the way he would act. And so we made some demo tapes, and we went and sold some of them and gave some of them away and whatnot. And he just keeps getting it. I don't know what it is about him. He just keeps getting in trouble over petty stuff, you know. And but I used some of his music though for my soundtrack for the Jameel'S show soundtrack. I did that, you know, and I let him know I did it too. Okay. Prayer, meditation, energy readings. So I do prayer work. I do meditational readings for people. I do energy aura readings for people. And this is something I'm learning from channeling the reptilian beings, the reptilian entity. Ancestral prayer. That's something I'm big on. Praying through the people who came before you because you are your mother and your father, right? You're a mix of your mother and your father. And I had that Juice soundtrack, that Juice tape with Tupac Shakur, and I saw the film back in the film came out like '92. I saw the film in '93, and I remember when I saw the film, at that time it used to take a movie like 9 months to get from the movie theater to Blockbuster. Now when you go to the movie theater and you watch a film, the DVD will be out within 2 weeks. Like while the movie's still at the theater, the DVD's already. Sometimes the DVD will be out before the movie, you know. And at that time, I remember a film would come out at the movie theater, and then it would take 9 months, sometimes a year, for it to make it to VHS, to videotape. And like Aladdin, I remember when Disney put Aladdin out, everybody, and this was before, a little bit before, I was still too young at the time, but I remember everybody was waiting for Aladdin to come out. It took almost a year for Aladdin to come out on VHS. So when Juice came out the movie theater, it was packed. And I didn't know who Tupac Shakur was. I've met people I know people who knew Tupac, but I didn't know who he was when he, I'm older now, but I didn't know who the hell Tupac was, and so the movie Juice came out, then it made it to VHS, and I seen Bishop in the movie Juice, right? And I'm sitting there watching it, and I see him jumping over all these fences and getting away from the police, and tearing stuff up and shooting at people and all that stuff, and jumping over buildings and whatnot. I said, wow, man, that's interesting. But at the time, when I saw Tupac Shakur on film, a lot of people saw that movie Juice, and they immediately said that's who Tupac is. Tupac's, an evil guy, or he's heartless and he's cold, because that was the character that Bishop displayed. When that wasn't really, Tupac was actually a compassionate person, right? And so that was my first introduction to the music industry. And I went and bought. I thought I wanted to see Tupac on the. I thought I was going to hear something about Bishop. I didn't know who Tupac was, but I thought I was going to hear something about Bishop on the cassette tape. And I went to the store and I got the cassette tape from the movie Juice. And Bishop, you didn't hear it. It was just the rappers, like Too Short and was it Naughty by Nature and whatnot on the soundtrack. DJ Pooh, or not DJ Pooh, but DJ. I can't remember. But okay, so yeah, the soundtrack. Then a couple years later, a couple years later, I was with my friend, and he had a tape. He had a Tupac tape, and I said, "That's the same guy from the movie Juice." And they were like, "Yeah, that's the same guy." And I said, he's a rapper?" They said, "Yeah, man, he's a rapper." And so I said, "Wow, wow, wow." And so, but that was my first introduction. That was my first introduction to Juice. And man, Razor was so funny. One day, me and Razor, me and Razor, we went to there's a shop called Sangs that sells clothes. They sold like street clothes. People want boss jeans and stuff like. So me and Razor were walking down the street one day, and we seen somebody try to steal something out of Sangs. And they tried to get away, and the owner guy, was a Korean guy, right? These are Korean people that run the store. The Korean guy started whooping the guy's ass that stole the stuff out of the store, and he was a little short guy. He was a little short Korean guy, but he jumped on him and took him down to the ground and all this stuff. And Razor was sitting there making fun of it, cracking jokes. Razor was sitting there cracking jokes on the guy that was getting beat up by Mr. Sang, and at the same time, I was like, man, Razor was something else. I'm trying to see what. And rap music changed a lot. See, that's one thing about rap music is I was looking at some photographs of not photographs, but some scans of Kid and Play, and the Source had Kid and Play on the cover playing basketball and all that stuff, and then the Source had Criss Cross on the cover, dressed in a jail uniform, And I was thinking, wow, man, they went from Kid and Play playing basketball to crisscross going to prison. And it's funny how the music industry changed a lot. I explained this in my metaphysical mentoring classes, how in the at least when it comes to hip hop music and what you would call the black community, black culture, you see how somewhere in the 80s the focus was on black women, and in the late 80s and early 90s the focus turned more into a focus on black men rappers, at least as for what black folks were doing at that time. And so the focus turned from black women singers to black men rappers, and it went from rappers just rapping to more of what you call gangster rap. And gangster rap spawned the imagination of a lot of people, and a lot of people who weren't actually really involved in anything nefarious or involved in any dope dealing or gang activity put on the persona of the gangster rap. Now you don't see that anymore. Gangster rap doesn't really exist anymore. Gangster rap doesn't exist anymore. But that's what you saw in the early 90s. That's what you saw in the early 90s. Yeah. Yeah, and I got an interview I did called "A Real Ghost Story." I got an interview, "A Real Ghost Story." I got that. And I'm tired of myself. I feel like I've been very deeply misrepresented. I've had, and I'm not speaking about it on the internet, but just going through my life in general. I've had people always try to misrepresent me and talk about me behind my back and make up lies about me and say things about me that aren't true, trying to misrepresent me and misrepresent my character. And they're gonna misrepresent themselves all the way doing it. So that's what it is. My website is Metaphysical Consultant. What movies? I'm trying to think. Remember the movie? I like horror movies. Let me see. Jeepers Creepers. I don't know what made me think of that. Jeepers Creepers. Jeepers Creepers is a strange film. I was gonna do something on that. I did something previously on what was it? Nightmare on Elm Street. How Freddy Krueger was a child killer, right? And Freddy Krueger was murdering the children of Elm Street. And the parents got together and burned Freddy Krueger alive in his in the factory that he worked at. Well, hold on, let me stop. Freddy Krueger got arrested and he was going to court, and he got off on a technicality, and the parents at Elm Street burned him alive in the factory, in the mill, and then he comes back through the dreams and haunts the children of Elm Street and kills and maims the children in the dreams, and very few live to tell, right? But Freddy Krueger was only doing this because the parents allowed him to do it. I have a very deep metaphysical interpretation, and Robert Englund says that I was already saying this, but I saw Robert Englund in an interview, and Robert Englund was saying something exactly the same. That you can't really blame. Robert Englund plays Freddy Krueger, and Robert Englund also did coming from the show V. A lot of people remember the show V, the old show V, with the Reptilian show V, where the people from outer space had the Reptilian NASA. But Robert Englund is a wonderful actor. Robert Englund is a wonderful actor, and Robert Englund, I saw him in an interview with him and Tony Todd. If you remember, Tony Todd plays Candyman. He also played a hall monitor in Lean On Me, right? So Robert Englund was saying something similar about how Freddy Krueger was only doing what he was doing because the parents allowed him to do it, because the parents weren't explaining to the children that Freddy Krueger was real. The parents kept telling the children that there was no Freddy Krueger and that it was all in their mind, and Freddy Krueger didn't exist. But the parents were a part of a murder. The parents participated in murdering Freddy Krueger, and they didn't want to explain to the children that they murdered Freddy Krueger. So they just told the children that they said, "You're crazy. There is no Freddy Krueger. You're crazy." They didn't want to tell the children what really happened, that they murdered a man. And it's because of it's the lies of the parents that are getting the children killed. If the parents would have stood up and say, your nightmares are accurate. We murdered Freddy Krueger, and he's coming after you. Had they been honest with the children, they might have saved the children's lives, or the teenagers' lives. But the parents kept the children in lies. And Freddy Krueger continued to murder all the children because the parents were weak. The parents were ignorant. The parents were soft. They weren't real parents. It's the parents' fault Freddy Krueger murdering all these teenagers. And that's sort of the metaphysical breakdown that I have in a lot of my films. A lot of people get caught up in the boogeyman mysteria, where they think the boogeyman is responsible for all this stuff. The boogeyman isn't as bad as what you think he is. Sometimes it's the heroes. Sometimes the hero is the villain. So Jeepers Creepers kind of. Johnny Depp played the first one. Yeah, Johnny Depp played in the first one with Heather Langenkamp. This was my favorite film growing up. Nightmare. I used to love to watch this film, Nightmare on Elm Street. I used to love to watch this Nightmare on Elm Street film. And it was always the honest people that got away from Freddy Krueger, the people who were the most honest with themselves. Like on the second Nightmare on Elm Street, Freddy's Revenge, you notice how Jesse was struggling with homosexuality. I think the theme of Nightmare on Elm Street 2 was Jesse struggling with homosexuality. And in the film, there's a lot of homosexual connotation with the gym teacher, the coach, and him going into the school and going into that gay bar and all that stuff. And it was about him and Freddy Krueger, him versus Freddy Krueger, but it was kind of some sort of subliminal theme in the movie about him coming out of the closet or something like that. That's what it really looked like, if you really pay attention to the second Nightmare on Elm Street. And he survived. He survived. But the people who are usually the most honest are the people who actually lived through the films with Freddy Krueger. And in my metaphysical mentoring classes, I break down to people how I talked to a man one time who sold people, boxes with bricks in them as VCRs and DVD players, and he would dupe people into this, and I would say, "How do you do that? How do you do that?" He said, I can't fool an honest person. He said, I can only fool somebody who's greedy like me. If somebody is greedy like me and they're dishonest, I can fool them. I can't fool an honest person because an honest person is going to ask too many questions. An honest person, you cannot sell a stolen merchandise to an honest person. They're going to ask too many questions. But a greedy person, if they're like me, I can do it all day. And I really listened to what he said, and I said, that makes a lot of sense. And so when you look at Freddy Krueger, it's the people who are the most honest with themselves that he has the hardest time with. And Freddy Krueger, in the first one, Freddy Krueger, Nancy got him in the first one because she was saying, you're afraid of me because when I'm taking all my fear from you, you can't have my fear, and I'm going to own my own fear. Man, that takes me back to some research I was doing on a group that I love. There's a group from the 1960s known as the Process Church of the Final Judgment, and they have some of the best scripture in their little group that they did back then. And they talked about fear and owning your fear. And very few people own their fears. Very few people take possession of their fear and say, this is my fear. Today I'm going to own my fear. Or this is my joy. Today I'm going to own my joy. People don't take possession of the emotional aspects of themselves. They leave their fears up to whoever can take hold of their fears. They leave their happiness and and all their things up to the television. They leave it all up to whoever can own it, and they don't own their own fear. And Nancy on Nightmare on Elm Street, she owned her own fear, and she got past Freddy Krueger, and he didn't even do anything to her. She said, "I'm taking all my power back from you," and she turned on him, and he disappeared. And that's one thing that I teach people in my metaphysical mentoring classes is how to own your own fear and have spiritual wealth and spiritual possessions. You know, like how you possess a car, that's how you possess a fear. And I learned that from studying this 1960s group, Process Church of the Final Judgment, and they taught me a lot. I was reading a book that they wrote from back in the 60s. And Freddy Krueger is very metaphysical. It's a horror film, but they're brilliant though. Like how, not the third one was Dream Master when they're at the mental institution. The third one was Dream Warriors when they're in the mental institution. The fourth one was Dream Master when the woman reflected himself through the mirror and she disappeared. And you have to respect Freddy Krueger, even though in the film series, as a villain, he has to be respected. As a villain, as the caliber of villain he is, he has to be respected. So if you're weak, if you're mentally weak, or you have hang-ups, he's coming. He's coming to get you. And the first two, and the thing about Nightmare on Elm Street, the house that Nightmare on Elm Street was filmed at is in an area of Los Angeles known as Mid-City, Los Angeles, and it's right down the street from the same house they filmed Michael Myers. A lot of people don't know that. The same house they filmed Halloween, right down the street from the original house that they filmed Nightmare on Elm Street. But there's only two houses. I mean, there's only two films with that house. The first Nightmare on Elm Street and the second Nightmare on Elm Street. It was filmed at the same house, the same location. And after that, they used stage houses. Kind of like Anthony Perkins' Psycho, how they only used the original setting once or twice or something like that, and then the rest of them, Alfred Hitchcock. The first one was Alfred Hitchcock for Psycho, and then they switched it and started using other stage fronts. But like with Nightmare on Elm Street, only twice they used the same house. And then after that, stage houses. And I think there's something magical about horror films because horror films give people an opportunity to face on screen what they can't face within themselves. A lot of people go to horror films to scare themselves because they're dealing with struggles in their life and they can't face them inwardly. So it's easy to watch them on the screen. I'm having trouble in my life facing these fears, so let me watch these fears on the screen and process these fears through the screen. Like, you know, that's why I think horror films are important, because it gives people an opportunity to deal with through media what they can't deal with in real life. And that's one of my favorite actors. I think Robert Englund is. And me and Razor used to go watch these. I remember, man, Razor was so funny. Razor, there, on Dream Child, Nightmare on Elm Street 5, there was the part where the guy, the hell is his name? Dan in the movie. And this guy in real life went and joined the military. The guy who plays Dan, let me look up his name. Remember he got on the motorcycle in Nightmare on Elm Street 5, and Freddy Krueger turned the motorcycle alive, and Freddy Krueger was like, "I feel the need for speed, bitch!" It had him fly it, and there was smoke coming out of him and all that stuff. Well, this guy went to the military. This guy played in 2 films. Dan Jordan and Danny Hassel. So his name in real life is Dan Jordan. The movie is Danny Hassel, and he played in Nightmare on Elm Street 4 and 5. And this guy went to in real life. This guy went to the military. I didn't get that. That's one thing I don't get about some of these actors. You play in 2 films, the cult classics, then you go and join the army. What the hell's wrong? No, I'm just joking. But I guess that was his passion. You gotta respect that. Yeah, Hassel enlisted in the army. Blah, blah, blah. Wow. That says something about somebody. That's pretty neat. But that motorcycle scene, wow, it's trippy. That junkyard scene, man, Nightmare on Elm Street was tripped out. But I like a lot of old horror movies, like House of Wax, with Vincent Price. Vincent Price played in The House on the Haunted Hill too, but The House of Wax was a wonderful movie. Vincent Price is one of my favorite actors. Vincent Price is a wonderful actor. The other film I like, I'm gonna get off these films, but Puppet Master. I respect Full Moon Entertainment came out with the Puppet Master series, and I used to love these films when I was growing up. And I used to play video games and like Mortal Kombat and whatnot, and watch these films. And Puppet Master, the story was about Andre Toulon, who use Egyptian magic. I mean, not Egyptology, but Egyptian magic to animate the puppets. But if you really pay attention, they were using the pineal gland. Because the little puppets would go and kill their victims and take the pineal gland and then turn it into some sort of serum or potion to reanimate the puppets. Puppet masters. It's a brilliant film. It's a horror film, and it's a B. You know, the first one might have been mainstream, but the rest of them were B movies. But they were. These films are cool. Puppet Master series. They still have these online. I mean, they still come out with these, but the older ones are the better ones. I like stuff with the Nazis in it. Like Puppet Master has stuff with the Nazis in it. Then Indiana Jones has stuff with the Nazis. And I always thought the Nazis were fascinating. I remember I was speaking to my grandfather one time, right? And he was in the service and he was all over the world, and then he became a pilot, right? He was a captain. And he flew for Transworld Airlines. And I remember asking him, I was like, have you ever seen any Nazis? He was like, yeah, I've seen some Nazis before. And I thought he was joking. I'm like, you saw some real? He said, yeah, I saw some Nazis in Ireland in the early '50s in a bar in Ireland. They were like, they were kind of like in refuge, not hiding out. They were just in refuge. Like, man, you saw some real Nazis, that type of thing. And I always thought the Nazis were interesting. There's a good movie. Let me see what other movie. Leprechaun was a favorite of mine. And man, Razor used to be so funny. I always used to get Razor. I would always know how to get Razor worked up about stuff, and I used to get Razor worked up about stuff on purpose, and I and he like man, we used to watch all these horror movies and stuff and what that was. One small step for man, one giant leap of terror. I like the leprechaun because he has his gold and he wants his gold, and these people keep messing with his gold, and he goes after them. And he always makes the people look so stupid when he does it too. They get themselves in trouble. That's the thing about the leprechaun. He doesn't go to them; they come to him. They get them own selves in trouble. And he hangs out in Vegas like a leprechaun 3. He's in Vegas. Then leprechaun in space. Then I didn't even know who the leprechaun was until I saw him in that movie Ray. The leprechaun played in Ray, not as a leprechaun, but as the actor. Okay, so man, this thing's been going for a while. Oh yeah, hour and 30 minutes. So I started off speaking about the reptilians. And the reptilians have to be respected. And there's a difference between fear and respect. Because if somebody fears you, they don't respect you. They're going to try to get over on you first chance they get. The minute they get away from you, they're going to stab you in the back. If they That's why I've learned over the years, respect and fear is two different things. If you truly respect somebody, it doesn't matter if they're there or not. You're still going to respect them. If somebody's using fear over you, you're not going to give a fuck about them. Excuse my language. I'm sorry. Excuse my language. I've been working on my swearing. But you're not going to care about them. I may have some fear over you, but I'm going to stab you in the back first chance I get. But if I respect you, hey, I don't, what am I gonna? Why do I? If I respect you, I respect you. So there's a difference between fear and respect. That's what channeling the reptilian taught me, was have respect. There's a difference. Fear doesn't mean anything, but respect means a lot. Now, there's a difference between fear and respect. Man, look, looking at pictures. Alright, so we have that. Then I have, what am I wanting to say? On my website. Yeah, so to go back to the concept of having a boss, like, you ever notice how most people don't like their boss? You can go talk to somebody, you can be like, man, your boss is a SOB, blah, blah, blah. And a lot of people will agree. They'll say, yeah, my boss, man, that motherfucker, blah, blah, blah. You can become friends with somebody and get them to do something for you just talking about their boss. Just say, man, your boss, I don't like your boss, blah, 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 your boss. You can subvert somebody quickly. That's how subversion takes place. You ridicule their superiors. Just keep ridiculing their superiors over and over and over again. And eventually they'll give up and say, yeah, you're right, you're right. Then you learn to subvert them. And that's something, you know, that's something with people is they have an issue with authority. They have an issue. I've seen over and over how people want people above them, but then they get mad that there's people. But why'd you go to them in the first place? You want approval and you want to feel important, and you want this job so bad. And then after a few months, you want to go work for Sony or Warner Brothers or whatever, or go, work. Why don't you start your own business? Then you don't have to worry about having an overseer. That's how corporate espionage occurs. You have a boss, somebody come start talking bad about the boss, and he's the one who gave you the job to begin with. Yeah. But anyway, I want to end this video. That's my site, Metaphysical Consultant, and I'm doing channeling. I'm going to be channeling a reptilian entity. Only in order to help people. That some But most of the insights I get are from my own self, from what I call instant psychic downloads. Yeah, psychic download. And that's what I do, because I don't, the thing about myself is that's what I do is I do spiritual work for people, emotional support, and I've done it for many years. And I don't believe in getting a job and then sitting around complaining about the job. If you want to go get a job, don't complain about it. Nobody made you pick that job. You chose that job. You don't have to work. You go get a job somewhere and then you sit around complaining about your job. You have to do your own work. Nobody's going to do it for you. Sit around like a baby. You want a job, then you're going to go cry about it and sit around like a baby whining about it. Get your sorry ass up and work, Excuse my language, but that's how I do this, because this is what I enjoy. This is my work. Gone through a lot over it, too. Gone through a whole lot over it. That's what I do, is metaphysical work and spiritual work for people. Hold up a second. I'm going to look at the X file, see, right before I turn this. X file. Man, you got there's a new X Files on it? I thought it's the same. See, they're showing people about these extraterrestrials. chin. Yeah. That's it. My site, metaphysicalconsultant.com.